Now, like most people living in a suburban garden, I have this modern fence panelling separating my boundary with my neighbour, and I'm now thinking I want to get it covered. You could do that with shrubs, you could do that by painting it. However, what I'm going to do is plant an ivy. Now, I know ivy is not everyone's favourite plant. It can be quite invasive, and it can sort of put people off on that basis. However, there are some really beautiful varieties out there. I mean, I think there are approximately 350, so you can find one that you like and can find ones that are very, very decorative. They're also evergreen, so in the winter they get that kind of colour coming through the garden, which I think is really important. Now, this one I have found is something called Hedera Dentata Variegata. Now, I really like it because I like variegation in leaves. Now, I know some people don't, but you can find one that doesn't have variegation, and it's got some really, really nice, leathery, big leaves, and hopefully I can get that covering this fence. Now, trying to get an ivy trailed up with fence, people may often think, oh, I need to attach it. I mean, it comes on these canes like this, tied round, and you might think, oh, I need to find a fixing. But actually what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to trail it along the bottom of the fence panels here. And eventually what it will do is once it's grounded and set some roots down into the ground, it will then start sending up vertical shoots, of which I'll train. So like anything, my soil is quite moist, it's quite clay-like, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to add anything into the hole, but I'm going to dig a hole which is quite deep. And as you can see, it's got this lovely, lovely root ball attached to it, which is really nice. It has got some grit in the soil actually, where it's come from the garden centre, but I'm not going to add anything additional into the soil. So I'm just going to tease out a couple of the roots down here, like this, and I'm going to remove this. Right, now what I was saying is, you could attempt to trail it up this fence post here, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to encourage it to run along the ground to start with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these tent pegs, so I'm going to fix these. So here you can see what I've done. I have put the ivy in and I've trained its shoots along the horizontal. And eventually, as we discussed before, it's going to send up vertical shoots to cover these panels. Now you could try and put it up the central post, but what's going to happen there is it's going to carry on all the way up, and then you're going to be left with this blank space. And then you're going to try and have to feed it out across the top, which, it seems like a lot of work. Leave it like this. It will take a while to settle down, get the roots going, but it's now we're in spring, it will start sending off shoots, and then you'll be watching it grow up your fence and then wondering why on earth you ever planted it, really. Now that we're in spring, I'm going to start putting some things into my main borders. One plant I really, really like are teasels. Now what I've done is I had teasels in the garden for the past couple of years, and I've just retained the seed out of the seed heads. They will seed themselves freely across your garden and they will go everywhere. I tend to dig those out because A, they don't land where I necessarily want them, and although I do want teasels to have a feeling of randomness through the borders, I don't want it that random. So what I tend to do is take the seed out. That comes in about August, September. You can plant that straight into pots. And you might think that's a bit balmy, planting something effectively which some consider a weed into a pot, but teasels are great because if you like Verbena bonoriensis, they also give you a very similar effect. They're tall, they're semi-see-through, and they create height where you want them throughout the border. Now, quite clearly, this is in a pot called trailing geranium, and it's quite clearly not a trailing geranium, so it's really important to reuse your pots if you do a lot of gardening like I do. And then just, they're really, really small seeds, sprinkle them on top of the soil, and then they germinate very, very quickly. And then what they do is they formulate this sort of rosette. Now, I didn't give these any protection over the winter, they were just left outside, but as you can see they survived. A couple of weeks here, we went down to about -10 with a good few inches covering of snow, and although they've got some sort of frost damage around the edge, as you can see in the middle it's got a really, really nice rosette forming. Now I'm going to plant these out now because they don't tend to like being moved, because what they've got is they've got a tap root. Now the tap root is currently almost coming down to the bottom now, and it's forming quite a nice, quite a strong root system. But if you leave them much longer, if you move them, they're just going to sulk and they're not going to grow anything. Now they are a biennial, so you have to get them started in the year before if you want them to flower in the year you want them. But you can kind of trick them. So because I've seeded it in September, it's gone through a harsh winter outside. It now thinks it's been alive for 2 years, and it will go into the garden and it will send up a flower spike pretty quickly. And I'm going to plant, I've got about 6 to 8 of these, so I think I'm just going to start thinking about where I'm going to plant them and put them through. And I mix them up with everything else. So teasels, yeah, do give them a go. If you do buy from the garden centre, the seed's also incredibly cheap, or if you want to clamber along a bank, often you can just find them growing on the side of the road and collect seed head, which is effectively what I do. Another thing I'm going to do today is I'm also going to plant out these perennial poppies. Now this perennial poppy is called Beauty of Livermere. It's from the orientale Goliath Group, which means it's a perennial. You can sow poppy seeds just as a meadows type flower by sprinkling annual seeds, but I haven't had much luck with germination with that. I think they really do need poor conditions, they like to be treated quite roughly, and I don't seem to be able to actually get them going. So what I find really successful if you like poppies is growing these perennial ones. Now what I will do is when putting these into the ground is give them plenty of ample drainage. They don't like rich clay soil, which is what I want to, but I will put lots of grit and gravel in and get them going. Now they tend to flower in around June time, and then what you're left with the rest of summer these lovely seed heads, and then you can underplant them with other things, annuals, and then they sort of cover over that, mingle in, and then you've got a really, really nice plant for the summer. The problem with planting in what was kind of mature border is actually finding space for these things that you've grown on. You think, I'm going to grow this, I'm going to grow that, and it's actually quite difficult. So trying to find a place for these is becoming quite a challenge. But as you can see, they're turning into some really good plants. So I'm going to tease out these beautiful roots. Look how healthy they are. Just so they can get right out into the soil and find a new home in my border, really.